What does Zoochosis hide from the player behind the scenes? In Zoochosis, you'll work tirelessly through the night, filling the shoes of the mysterious, vacant, overnight zookeeper position. This is not an ordinary zoo, however, as your job is a bit more dire than the application leads you to believe. During your stay, you'll monitor the health of your animals, feed them their favorite foods, and deal with the Lovecraftian horror of an otherworldly parasite that turns them into flesh-eating monsters. In this video, we'll be pulling the curtain back in search of things you can't typically see, like how the infected animals function outside the player's view. We'll also be breaking things as we go, including taking a brisk walk out of bounds. It's going to be a long night, so I hope you enjoy today's out of bounds look at Zoochosis. Before getting ahead of ourselves, let's start with a quick peek at the title screen, since it's actually pretty interesting. So typically while viewing this menu, we'll see a variety of security camera feeds as they swap between enclosures. The feeds shown here are not just looping videos, but instead 3D environments we can maneuver the camera through. From what I can tell, these locations are copies of the map we'll eventually explore throughout our night at the zoo. Only the area being shown on the menu screen will be loaded in, and the rest will be temporarily unloaded. As the camera swaps between angles, we can watch the animals inside the enclosure warp between their animations. At times you'll see the mutated animals moving through the camera shot, and because of this, each enclosure has its corresponding infected model placed somewhere out of sight. In some cases, they're floating beyond a fence outside the level, and others, they're just standing in the open for all to see. Speaking of unnatural creatures, the player's model can also be found in this level. Our disembodied floating arms can be found atop a small white platform a long way from the rest of the level. We just might be the creepiest anomaly on this map. Now, because this game doesn't follow a linear flow of events, and it's also just pretty lengthy, I'll be breaking the recap up into several parts as we make our way through the story. So after starting a new game, we'll be forced to sign a shady NDA by a man called Doc, only to be injected by a mysterious substance as we're dragged away. As we wake up, Doc will guide us through the various steps in our zookeeping journey. As we push the food cart, there's a monstrous roar at the door followed by a slam, but I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. After entering the train, you head to the first enclosure, cut some food bricks, and then feed the animals. We then check their symptoms using various tools including the thermal imaging system, and then head back to make a cure for whatever illness we diagnose. We can then load our medicine into the dart gun and heal the sick animal. We'll stop our super condensed recap here and head back to the start of the night. So with the lights on, we can get a better look at the area around us, which is a bit hard considering we can't ever leave the facility. For starters, I should address some of the characters in the game, including Doc here, don't look quite right with the lighting effects disabled. Forget Doc though, since we can have a closer look at his sweet ride. It looks to be an old Ferrari or a Lamborghini of some kind, and with the promise of one of these on the table, I have no choice but to survive the night. Oh yes, it will be mine. Now as the first cutscene takes place, we'll watch as Doc talks to himself at the table since the player doesn't technically exist yet. As he shuffles the papers around, our NDA will end up on the ground between his feet with some crazy Z fighting going on. Paul, the character we play as, will then load in at the desk across from Doc. Well, part of us anyway. We're currently only a set of floating arms, but that won't be the case forever. After we receive our PDA, Doc will stand up and waddle around the table, vanishing for a second before reappearing to give us the mystery serum. I can say for certain that this did not feel good. That needle looks more like a power drill. Doc then warps inside the player as we revert to an A pose, if you can call it that. A second Doc then appears at the doorway to drag an invisible Paul through the office. We'll then warp into a separate part of the facility where we can see our full player model, but only for a moment. Doc then duplicates yet again, standing next to the meat grinder while simultaneously occupying the couch. The camera is in a fixed position here, and the couch Doc will unload as our camera pans down, leaving only the second copy. Now, at this point, we'll be forced into some manual labor as we move some herbs and vegetables on our little cart. During our return to the train though, a loud slam will be heard, and something appears to hit the door beside us. By moving the camera, we can get a better look at this occurrence, and fortunately, it was all bark and no parasite. The door moves slightly, but we can see that there's nothing on the other side for us to worry about. I do find it a bit creepy out here though, and the red terrain has me convinced we're on the surface of Mars and not some shady zoo, which would explain the whole mutating animals thing. We'll shelve that theory for now though, and have a look at the map around us. And in doing so, you'll find that this map appears a bit incomplete at the moment. The reason for this is because each area occupies a separate location within our lovely void space. To my knowledge, each of the enclosures loads in a straight line relative to the hub. At least all of them that I checked anyway. As we choose a location on the train's terminal, we'll leave the hub, and the chosen area is loaded in as we arrive there. What's interesting to me is that the hub never unloads during this process, and even though we can't access it until we return, it will remain present no matter where we go. There was something else I noticed while looking at Abounds that's worth mentioning. A huge distance from the rest of the map, we can find a small section of developer text. This appears to be a debug menu that was overlooked, and therefore was not removed before the game's final release. There are several options out here, including Level Manager, Tutorial Flow, and the most important manager of all, Now, wrapping at our first stop for the night, we'll step over to the kitchen factory in order to prepare the giraffes some dinner. To do so, we'll take our vegetarian-friendly food bricks and cut them to size with a giant table saw. It's surprising the animals have anything to eat though, since following the cut-off piece with the camera shows that it clips straight through the machine and falls through the bottom of the train. This happens every time, so I have no idea what they're actually eating, and I'm not sure I wanted to know either. We'll then offload the gadget trolley, pushing it along the track into the enclosure as we catch a glimpse of the first parasite in our playthrough. It's a very brief encounter, so let's take a closer look from a different perspective. As we begin pushing the trolley across the rails, the parasite will appear behind a wooden chest and begin scurrying across the wall in the opposite direction. This is definitely a creature best viewed at a distance, since we can see all the horrifying details when we're this close. It's a snake-like creature with legs similar to a centipede, and its body is covered in holes. The hands and mouth also look similar to a human's, which makes this creature all the more terrifying. When this nightmarish critter leaves, it scurries past the pipes and other map objects and into the corner of the room, where it can then unload out of our sight. After our little encounter, the cart can be pushed to the enclosure under a very watchful eye. Give me some room to work here, man. It's hard to be productive with you in my personal space. I did get the space I was hoping for here. Unfortunately, it's not how I expected. Because I had the active camera detached from the player controller while pushing the cart, I had moved along, just not in the right direction. This resulted in me getting stuck out of bounds, somewhere I'm definitely not supposed to be, as evidenced by the distinct lack of floor. After walking alongside the train in the tunnel, I accidentally clipped back inside using the train's back door. The task has failed in my favor once again. Take that, void space! After entering the first exhibit, I had a quick peek around the level itself. Of course, I got acquainted with our giraffe friends as well, and what better way to do that than with a hot meal. They were definitely excited for their feeding time, but we're here for more than a dinner service. After returning to the gadget trolley, we'll have to use the various tools provided in order to check each animal's symptoms to not only diagnose their sickness, but also make a cure later on. But we'll get to that in a short while. We'll get the poop vacuum out of the way first, since the noise it makes still haunts my dreams, and it's not much easier to observe from a different angle. As for the thermal imaging device, the moment we slap it down, we'll swap to its thermal view, and we have a limited range of motion. Of course, the device itself was never real, and it vanishes as soon as we set it up, but the player's disembodied arms still remain. As we return to the train to run diagnostics on the animals, we'll first deposit our brown findings into the biomaterial receiver. While viewing this, I realized that within the canister, a fully flattened copy of the parasite can be found at the very bottom. Because it's compressed so badly, the object itself is clipping through itself, resulting in some pretty fierce flickering. At least that's what I believe is taking place here. Now, before heading back to the hub, there's something pretty terrifying hidden out of bounds. So because this is the first enclosure of the tutorial, we won't be faced with the task of handling a mutation. But that doesn't mean they're not present. Directly beneath the enclosure, there's a huge white rectangle with something horrifying on top, the mutated variant of the giraffe. This in itself is a clue to how the infected animals function behind the scenes. The mutated giraffe is placed here in its idle pose, waiting for the player to collect data for the animals before a transformation takes place. As I said, we won't face this monstrous beast here because we're still in the first enclosure. But it's really cool seeing this terrifying creature up close. One of the biggest driving factors for Zoochosis is the mutations we'll encounter, and they definitely didn't go easy here. This giraffe, if you like to call it that, is the definition of nightmare fuel. Whether it's the giant spider legs or the gaping razor-line jaws that make it so scary, I think this is my first and last night. Sorry Doc, you can keep the sports car. After depositing the contents of our dookie jar, we'll get jump scared by Doc after climbing aboard the train. It's a simple jump scare, but an effective one. From another angle, we'll see that Doc didn't manage to sneak up on us fairly, but instead teleports into the doorway as soon as we enter. Either way, not cool, man. With the tutorial out of the way, we'll head back to the hub with Doc before he parts ways for the night. Before we get a moment to relax though, Paul's wife Lily will begin pounding on the door, and we'll send a brick of meat home with her before continuing our work. After completing our first solo enclosure, we'll receive a heads up from Doc informing us that a meat delivery was made back at the hub. Once there, we'll pull a lever which reveals that the meat in question was actually from from a human, and the meat pies we're serving are far from ethically sourced. I'm really gunning for that Christmas bonus this year, so I pulled the lever and ground the meat as instructed. Loading our brick trolley onto the train, we'll head to the wallaby enclosure and repeat the previous steps to diagnose their illness. Upon our return, an animal will transform into their mutated state, and we'll have to deal with them before finishing our tasks. To do this, we'll either have to John Wick them using lethal injection darts, or if we've gotten the PDA containing the cure recipes, heal them and vacuum up the parasite. We'll once again pump the brakes on a recap and jump back to our return with Doc. As he stops by the window, we can move the camera outside and get a better look at Paul's wife Lily. We don't really get a good look at her during our zoo-bound adventures since she stands across the parking lot and behind the door, and as far as I know, we never get to see her up close. As Doc leaves the office, he'll warp outside next to his sweet ride and climb inside. After shutting the door, he'll quickly back up and then turn around, driving out of sight as the car unloads, and he crazy frogs it for a moment before unloading too. Next, we'll pass the packet of meat through the drop box, and as this occurs, we can see that Lily has completely vanished, despite talking to us through the door. Now, after quickly running through our first solo enclosure, you'll return to the hub to handle an unexpected meat delivery. If we take a look beyond the steel doors here, the person hanging from the hook is already loaded in, just waiting for the lever to be pulled. As soon as it's pulled, the doors will open, and they'll glide out above the grinder. Sadly, for our dangling friend here, this is HorrorScoped, and we've got to see what happens when the grinder is activated. As soon as the lever is activated, the blades will kick on, and the body will drop down through the blades. The body itself remains fully intact as it drops through the blades, and then it crunches down a bit, once out of sight, before it unloads. The brick of meat also appears here and begins sliding out the conveyor belt, and as it moves out of the way, the others will spawn in its place and follow the previous. I'm just glad to know that our friend here wasn't gobbled up by the machine, and it was all just a sleight of hand trick to entertain Paul. Yep, that's the story I'm sticking with. Beyond the steel doors, the next body for the grinder will load into the same place as the previous, remaining here until the lever is pulled once again. I'm sticking to a vegan diet for the animals though, so dead or alive, you won't be turned into ground beef today. Now, continuing on to the wallaby enclosure, I started gathering information for the diagnosis and then went back to the train. At this point, when we return to the habitat, a transformation will occur and we'll have to deal with the mutated animal. Typically, these start with a quick peek at the monster we're facing as they run back to their enclosure, and I was curious how this worked off camera. When the player returns to the habitat after gathering intel, the mutated animal will instantly appear in the hallway as the door is broken open. They'll then do their screeching animation, which is completely terrifying, before running out into the paddock. The wallaby decide to climb the building itself though, and by following them, we'll see that they stop behind this wall so the player cannot see them. Just in case you were curious, if we head down beneath the map, we'll find the unmutated version of the wallaby chilling on a white platform, and they're directly beneath an empty platform where the mutated model is stored. They're a lot cuter than what we're dealing with inside the level, and I really don't want to go back up there. While facing off with this Lovecraftian horror, we can take this opportunity to see how the game's jump scares work. As soon as the infected touches you, Paul and the mutation will snap into their jump scare sequence. In this case, we hold their jaws back with our bare hands, proving we're among the strongest disembodied arms in a horror game. Our attacker will then walk over top of us and move out of sight, and as the screen is blocked by static, reappear on top of us to stroll away. Somehow this attack managed to bring Paul's body back, and we're a whole person for the standing sequence. That's not the only scary thing the wallaby is capable of, since they have the ability to turn invisible as well. After hitting them with a dart, they'll turn invisible as they chase after the player, and after the final dart hits them, they'll uncloak like something out of a Predator movie. This sequence is pretty crazy to watch in bullet time, as we can now watch them reconstruct from their skeleton to their muscle, and finally their skin. It's hard to appreciate just how terrifying this animation is in regular time, and it's a lot cooler than I first realized. They'll then seize on the floor for a moment before the dead parasite appears in their mouth. This process is a bit different when we cure the animals though. After successfully curing a mutated animal, they'll screech as their flesh begins changing colors and the parasitic extremities fade away. The regular version of the animal then appears in a pretty contorted pose before going back to normal. For some reason, they also drop through the floor momentarily. From below the floor, we'll see that they just drop down and then slide back up, and I'm not sure why. After being cured, the mutation completely fades away as well, no longer appearing on the white platform out of bounds. Since we're already looking at the zebra, I figured I should show their special ability as well, where they essentially just duplicate in an instant. The second zebra appears, clipping inside the original, and then quickly moves apart. It'll then stroll in the opposite direction before spontaneously exploding, vanishing completely. From here I went ahead and jumped into the gorilla enclosure to handle my zookeeping duties. That means gathering data, making medicine, and fighting timeless parasitic mutants. Just a normal workday, nothing worth writing home over. Upon returning to the hub, I was surprised to arrive at one of the game's endings. Paul's infection continues to worsen as Lily arrives in the morning, being attacked by Doc as we collapse next to the door. We're then kicked in the face, being woken up as Doc towers over us. It then opens the door as the mother parasite reaches beneath it, dragging Paul to an untimely demise. This ending unfortunately means both Paul and his wife have died, and the woman we grinded up earlier was also pretty important apparently, so that's my bad. Restarting this ending, we'll rewatch it from another view, where we'll see the dire state of Paul's condition. After staring briefly at his hands, this model will vanish, and he'll reappear in the hallway where he's leaning up against the wall. He then resets into a standing pose and vanishes once more. While this is taking place, if we move the camera outside the office door where Lily was earlier, we'll see Doc walking in place up against the building. This may explain the shadows we see on the inside of the door frame during this sequence. But Doc must have mastered his Lily impression, since she's clearly not here during this cutscene. Paul now sits back against the door, totally headless, and the door will swing open as Doc strolls inside, throwing it back for a moment before he kicks her head in. Afterwards, we'll be warped across the hub and behind the train, where Doc provides some exposition regarding Mother's method of feeding. And the bad news is, we're on the menu. As the mother loads in, an entangled mess of arms will appear beyond the closed door and begin sliding forward as it opens. They slither through the opening like a mass of snakes, reaching out and grabbing a discombobulated Paul and dragging him through the agape door. After passing through this dark barrier, Paul's body will unload and the hands will freeze in place, concluding our first playthrough with a bad ending. Now that we've completed our first playthrough, we can start New Game Plus and restart the process. The previous 4 enclosures will be inaccessible, which means we're in uncharted territory in our hunt for the other endings. After completing the first enclosure, we'll return to the hub, only this time we'll save the mysterious woman instead of turning her into a meat brick. After handling our next set of tasks, the woman we saved, Sarah, will be trying to break into the basement using a fire axe. We'll then open the bio-waste filter and grab CJ's hand, bypassing the biometric lock and heading downstairs. When we meet Sarah for the first time, we'll once again see that the game's models don't look right with the lighting effects turned off. She is just going to town with the axe, trying to break the door down, which isn't going to get her very far, but I can't see how she feels about it, so we'll assume she's having a great time. After talking to her and opening the filter to obtain the hand, something hilarious happens to Paul during the sequence. The instant we pick it up, a separate copy of Paul's arms will appear holding the severed hand, while the others are held back out of the player's sight. It's pretty interesting because one pair is infected with the parasite and the others are completely healthy. Perhaps this is so they can account for both moments in time. After a moment, the infected arms will quickly swing back and throw the hand out of sight as the healthy pair disappears. As she walks downstairs, she's programmed to always look in the direction of the player, and because we're still upstairs, she'll just stare at the ceiling. It becomes less funny and more creepy as we move around, and she follows our movement through the ceiling. As we're here in the basement, we can grab our phone and call Lily, and during this time, we'll once again grow some extra limbs. I went ahead and dove into the next enclosure, did my veterinarian work, and then fought a hippo that was a definition of nightmare fuel. Returning to the hub, Sarah will be waiting for us in the office once again. Heading downstairs, she'll send us a recipe for a poison capable of killing the mother. And how she gets downstairs is actually pretty funny. As soon as she turns around to run downstairs, she'll zip straight down, clipping through the floor and into the chair behind the desk. A moment later, she'll snap into her standing position just to sit back down immediately after. After an angry phone call with Doc, we'll have to decide whether we kill Sarah or let her live. If we grab the axe, we'll strike Sarah with it while her back is turned. We'll then stumble over to the train again, and this time Doc will be waiting for us. One short dialogue later, we're fed to Mother, similar to the previous ending. Restarting this ending cutscene, we can watch what happens when we use our axe from another angle. Only Paul's arms are visible when we grab our weapon, and as we turn to Sarah and swing the axe, it will clip straight through her body as she resets into her standing pose. The axe is then leaned against the chair, and Paul reverts to an A pose before we're moved upstairs. We'll then watch as Paul stumbles past the train, falling unconscious in front of Doc as he snaps into his next animation. He then teleports beside the door, and Paul subsequently loads in while the hands come to grab him. Paul now reappears where he was laying a moment ago before the cutscene ends. If we choose not to kill Sarah, we'll be sent upstairs to make the poison for the mother. The poison can only be made using a female parasite, so we'll have to deduce which is which using the specimens we've collected from the cured mutants. We'll then be presented with another choice, either injecting the poison into ourselves or Sarah. If we choose to inject ourselves, Sarah will stop us and we'll head upstairs to Mother's enclosure. We give Sarah the injector as we sit against the wall, and she'll set the body cam down as Doc arrives. He'll head over to the door and open open it as Sarah knocks him out, injecting him with the poison before Doc gets dragged away. We then get a first look at Mother as she tears Doc in half, but Paul's had enough and closes up for the night, stealing that sweet sports car as the true ending comes to an end. Going back in time, we'll arrive at Mother's enclosure, where Paul materializes in front of Sarah. The injector then appears and flows into her hand as we snap into existence, pretty much dying next to the door. Sarah leans forward to grab our make-believe body cam, setting it on a barrel and floating away. After Doc opens the door, Sarah will use instant transmission and mutter, "Nothing personal, kid," as she attacks Doc with her floating poison injector. She whacks Doc over the head and he drops to the floor, and his doom is sealed when a singular hand grabs him by the leg to drag him away. After getting a good stretch in, Mother will load in alongside the assets for her enclosure. Her paddock is a small area lined with rocky structures and trees, and it looks like roots have overtaken most of the area as well. The Mother herself is in her default pose right now, so all of her tendrils and arms are sticking straight out, which is honestly a lot funnier than it should be. It's really cool to see this monster up close though, considering we only get a short glance at her in a singular cutscene. When the game is resumed, we can watch Doc split in bullet time, and both pieces will be thrown in different directions. The top half remains in these rock formations off to the side, and I can't imagine this feels too good. Mother then roars, her mouth opening horizontally in a way that will haunt my dreams for eternity. Paul then vomits up the parasite, and Sarah squashes it like the cursed slug in Spirited Away. Her model glitched out after this, and she stared directly at the camera, which seriously freaked me out. We'll then head outside to collect our prize, and with everyone saved, we've completed the true best ending. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to cover all the endings because there are so many of them. Allegedly, 23 in total, but one that had me curious was the bathroom transformation ending. In this ending, we'll return to the hub to find Sarah wielding the axe. We enter the bathroom as Sarah locks us in, and in the morning, our transformation gets out of hand, attacking Doc as he opens the door, and then Sarah directly after. From the outside, we'll see Doc arrive instantly beyond the door, and at this point, our hands have gone from bad to worse. The mutation has turned Paul into a Dead Space-inspired monstrosity. We're looking a lot like a necromorph, with extra fingers and fleshy growths. When Doc enters the room, our hands will fly up at him, and Doc will lay just flat on the ground, while Sarah clips through a table in the background. She's moved into the doorway a moment later, clipping through the wall as she runs away. For some reason, her arm rises up, and she dislocates her wrist, just to be moved back inside the table before the cutscene ends. Glorious! But with that, that's everything I found hidden behind the scenes in Zoochosis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!